Gentlemen, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Um, Our little clock on the wall back there is maybe a minute slow. We'll start with our patriotic song. Please stand, please. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the Pilgrims pride, from every mountainside, let freedom. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I guess I should have introduced myself. I'm Lanny Cardona, the president of the term starting the 1st of May. Unfortunately, life goes on, and Miss Betty Jo found out that our reflection lady caught COVID and has been told to stay in her home, so we will not have the reflection today. I also wanted to change the agenda a little in order to expedite some things. So the next thing we're going to have is welcoming by my lovely bride, Sarah.
This is my joy to introduce our new neighbor, Frances Durham. And Fran has been with us maybe a month, about a month with us. She was born in Tallahassee and grew up in Havana. And she graduated from FSU with a bachelor's degree in science and a master's in public administration. While she was raising two sons, she worked full-time in the field of group health insurance. She then went on to human resources. And she moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, and she was the director of human resources for Piedmont Community College. That has 6 campuses, and she was in charge of all of them and responsible for all of them. After that, she taught human resources at Clemson. She's worked many years in human resources. Frances enjoys watercolor painting, reading, and interacting with her 4 grandchildren, 3 of whom are in college. This is Frances Durham.
Before we get into the full agenda, I'd like to recognize somebody. There's a motto that the measure of a life is service. And we have on our board somebody who is the personification of that. And I'd like to recognize our past president, Miss Marjorie Turnbolt, for her service to this board and to you as residents this past year, and has set a very high bar for those that follow her. Miss Marjorie? And hopefully I'm not going to have to give out any more flowers this next year. We've got a pretty long agenda, but the most important item that we want to do this time, after we do the minutes, is the budget. So we'll start with Ms. Darlene, the minutes. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Any discussion by the board? Any discussion by the audience? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion is adopted. Mr. Marvin, you have the floor.
This is kind of a two-part presentation. First will be the report that closes out the last fiscal year. We had a budgeted income of $30,985, and we had a total income of $37,285, which means we achieved 120% of what was projected. As far as expenses are concerned, we budgeted around a little over $40,000. Our total expenses were $24,088, which means we only expended 60% of the budget. And our general fund account balance is $64,848. The employee gift fund account balance is $35,338. Savings account balance, $33,208, which means the total of all is $133,394. The end of month report for April, which is actually the final report for the year, is already on My W Life. Okay, next. Could you flash up the comparison budget? There we go. I don't expect you to read that. This is what I'm going to summarize for our next year's budget, for this current year's budget. Okay, now back to the other. All right. We have a number of line items column, which basically is whether it's a committee or interest group or some other item. So we have nine line items that are new for this year, and the total amount for those items is $4,275, and that comprises 8.6% of the new budget. The number of items that increased from last fiscal year is 15, and the total amount for those is $28,610, and that comprises 57.8% of the budget. We had 10 items from last year's budget that decreased, and their total amounts are $13,242, which comprises 26.8% of the budget. And we have 7 items that remain the same, which is they are total $33,365 at 6.8%. So our total budget is $49,492. Our projected income is $38,235, which leaves a deficit of $11,257. Don't be alarmed by that, please. If we accomplish 77.3% of expenditures, expended amount, we will break even. But if anything under that, such as the 60% expended this year, we'll be ahead of it. With that $11,257 deficit, we also have, as you saw in the beginning, a reserve of $64,848. So even if we expended 100% of that, we're still way ahead of the game. Basically, that's it. Just need to talk about approval.
Have a motion to accept the budget.
Second.
Okay. Have a first and second. Discussion by the board. Discussion by the audience. Any questions about the budget? Okay, wait for the mic. We have a mic out there somewhere.
I'm curious what the 7 new line items are.
You want me to read them off to you? Okay, let's see. I gotta pick them out of this long list. Okay, we have Bluebird box monitors. We have budget and finance. We have the forum. We have the history project. We have housekeeping, men's breakfast, and the Dempsey Mayo traffic, and the Westminster Oaks Barber Shop. Okay? Those are the new ones. Any other questions? Okay.
I think the point that Marvin made that we'd have to exceed the 60% that we spent this year in order to get up close to going over the budget in terms of not having a deficit. So it's to be seen whether all that money gets spent. We're not going to let it burn a hole in our pocket. And at mid-year, we're going to review what the groups and organizations have actually spent, and then go back and see if we need to adjust the budget to bring it more in line. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, for the board, all in favor of the motion to accept the budget, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes. Oh, there we go. Everett keeps telling me, make sure I look at that. Okay, a request for the management audit. Ms. Marjorie?
You will recall at the last meeting, we presented to the council the resolution that we asked to be sent to the board in Orlando and management in Orlando, requesting an external independent management audit. And in the judgment of the council, we felt that it was important that the audit be conducted by an independent professional audit company in order to assess the strengths and weaknesses that have been brought to us by many of you throughout the year, and in particular in response to what we went through in COVID and how that has changed our lives and how we have done business. We heard from you that there was some concern that the delivery of services in some areas fell short of your expectations and what you felt you had contracted to receive. And we have grown, as you know, in size. We now have a memory care center and other activities in recent years, and so it has become more complex here. And we felt that it was time, after 40 years of existence, to examine this. You also had expressed concerns about whether the organization was fully compliant with state laws and regulations. Our residents, you, have heavily invested in the life of this community. We are equivalent in many ways to as shareholders of a for-profit corporation, except for one major difference. We do not, practically speaking, have the option of divesting ourselves of our investment. And our dividends from our organization are in the form of lifetime care and services. We are justified in wanting assurance that the dividends we have in the form of quality services are secure and will continue. And that was the purpose of our request for a management audit. So what we asked for was that the Resident Council of Westminster Oaks hereby requests that the Board of Directors of Westminster Services or such other board or boards having responsibility for the management of Westminster Oaks hire an independent management consultant to conduct an audit specific to Westminster Oaks. And we listed 12 areas that we hoped that such an audit would address. Lanny and I met with Gary Hennis, the COO of Westminster Communities, and Scott Cairns, the Vice President for the North Florida region in Gainesville. We had sent them a copy of this request before meeting with them, had a very good meeting, and they assured us that they would give us a response as quickly as possible. We did receive in less than a week a response from them, and although they agreed to an audit, it is to be an internal audit. It will not be an external audit, and I will read to you the statement we received from Gary Hennis. It says, "We do not find it necessary to engage an outside organization to conduct an independent management audit. We do have many competent leaders within the organization in various leadership roles who would be able to review the management of the community and be objective in reviewing the operations and provide a written summary for review." Our hope that there would be independence, which would, before any findings were given, this is not to say it could not be objective, but that we would, from the beginning, have a sense of objectivity in what we would be seeing in such an audit. The review team will be comprised of the following individuals: Janet Herron, Vice President of Affordable Housing; Sandra Noble, Director of Risk Management and Quality Initiatives; and Chris Callahan, Regional Vice President for Operations. And I believe Janet Herron is going to be here on June 12th and will be starting her interviews, excuse me, with the Residents' Council. In response, and I wanted to share this, the last thing I'm going to share, we did send them back saying we appreciated that they had taken the time to come to Gainesville to meet with us and appreciated their quick response. As our proposal indicated, we had hoped for an external independent audit that would give our residents the assurance of objectivity. We do not question the competency of leaders within the organization. There is an advantage to have those involved who understand community care retirement community, continuing care retirement communities. However, there can be a disadvantage if they have not had broader experience in conducting management audits. It will be our assumption that there will be a written management audit proposal that will be shared with the Residents' Council. In addition, we will assume that because complete candor will be solicited from team members, that the audit team will assure some type of protective barrier, a confidentiality statement or agreement with respect to attributing response to specific employees. The intent of the Residents' Council in initiating bringing forward the request for an audit was to develop a high level of trust between our residents and management so that the solution to existing and future problems can be resolved more quickly with confidence and understanding. Mr. President.
Any questions from the board? Any questions from the audience? Yes, ma'am. Wait a minute till we get them.
Would it be possible to have that response placed on my W Life for under Residents' Council information for us to look at?
Yeah, we can do that. Any other questions on that? This doesn't require a motion or anything, it's just information for you. Further, this afternoon, just before this meeting, we received an email from Ms. Janet, the team leader of that audit team, setting the schedule. She's going to meet with each member of the current resident council on the 12th, and on the 13th, they're going to meet with the selected members of the administration and team members. We don't know who those people are at this time. The next item is the response to the future increase in fees. Also at that meeting, the last one that Ms. Marjorie chaired, we had received a request from one of our sister properties trying to get as many of the CCRCs within the Westminster communities to sign on to a memorandum requesting that future fee increases be limited to the increase in Social Security. There are 10 properties, such properties in the Westminster communities corporation. I'm not sure how many responded positively. I know that at least one said that they would not respond because they didn't think it was appropriate to tie the hands of the board to that Social Security increase. We did receive on the 2nd of May a letter from the chair of the board, John Hillenmeyer, and the CEO, Terry Rogers. I'm not going to read the whole letter, but what it says is that they have a disciplined approach to their budgeting process. It's bottom up. It starts with the individual communities and their executive directors and their staff pushing up what they think their needs are. It goes to corporate. Corporate then takes those numbers, they check them against the projected Social Security increases, projected increases in inflation, what their major deliveries of services and contractors say that their prices looking forward are going to be. And then based on that, they put those inputs into the budget to see what the income and the expenses are going to be in the coming year. Having done that, they think that tying it to Social Security is too much going to limit their flexibility, because in most cases, Social Security does not track with what the real expenses are. If you'll remember that in the case of Westminster Oaks, and I think for all Westminster communities, the constitutional amendment requiring $15 an hour pay for all employees was spread over time. Westminster decided that they would do it all in 1 year. So that was a hit. The second one was the shortage in nursing. They had a nursing staff increase in January, in the middle of the year, rather than having it at the beginning of the next year. So that was another impact. Also, employee wage rates were increased at about 5%. However, their health insurance went up about 6%. Most of the supplies, food, and other things were running in the 7 to 8% range. And across the whole Westminster communities, property insurance was projected to increase 30%. So those projections would not allow them to cap it at the Social Security rate. I also looked up the CPI for major and urban areas in Florida. I couldn't find it for Tallahassee, but for the other major areas, in all cases, it exceeded 10%. So those factors led them to say that they felt that it was not appropriate for the board or the administration to cap future fee increases to Social Security rate. I'll also remind you that historically, for the last 2+ decades, the CPI in only one case has exceeded 3%. In 2020, the CPI was 1.7%. It jumped almost 3% to 21 when it went to 7%, and it was about the same rate in 22. So you can see that there's been major increase in that. The projection going into this coming year is that it will still exceed 6%, but that's still a way off. So from your going to the grocery and those other things that affect you, you know that inflation is not abated appreciably for the coming year, but keep those things in mind. But those are the reasons that the board gave for not wanting to cap future increases at the rate of Social Security. Any comments from the board? Yes, ma'am.
One thing I think that they didn't really address was resident input in all of this, and the statutes do use the CPI, Consumer Price Index. If it goes above that, they must receive resident input. And I think, as we know, that was an issue here that is going to be corrected by the quarterly meetings in the future. But that was, they are not by statute required to cap it, but they must, if they're going to raise it above CPI, they must receive resident input.
Yes, ma'am, and that's a good point that thanks to our own Ms. Janet Ferris, who isn't here today, that we've gone back and asked Westminster Communities, or told them that they should adhere to the statute, which requires them to brief you as residents on the increase before it takes effect, that you would have the voice to express your concerns. But as Ms. Marjorie pointed out to me earlier this week, legislation is like making sausage. So that particular paragraph says that they have flexibility with the CPI, but also says that they don't have to cap it at that as long as they talk to us, which in the past they haven't done. But anyway, that's what sausage looks like in terms of the Florida statute. But it does require that we have an input to that process, and we see that in the going forward that is fact going to take place. Comments on that from the audience?
Lenny, could I just ask?
Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question, and maybe we've discussed this before, but do we have an idea of, for the other CCRCs in Westminster communities, what their increases were?
Yes, we do, but they were all different. They weren't the
Well,
same as
I know
ours.
they were different, that's why I'm
Yeah.
asking.
No, it's available to us. I don't have them all, but I know that
Okay.
they're out there.
I think it would be just interesting to see, because that would help in our concern with management, because I think ours was the highest.
I think it was too. Richard, do you have it for all of them? No. I think we do have it for the 3 CCRCs that are in the north region, correctly? Yeah. I think we can get that. I don't know if we have it for everybody else. We have a question in the back, Jay.
Thank you, Lanny.
You got to hold it close to your mouth.
Hold it closer on. Okay. So I understand that Westminster Communities does not adopt their budget until September or so. How does that fit in the timeline with communicating with Westminster Oaks?
No, that's incorrect.
Okay.
The budget process is almost starting now. It begins to be finalized in September. Ms. Shannon's back there to correct me if I'm not right. It should come to us in January, and it goes to the board in February and becomes effective the 1st of April. Any other questions on? Okay, we'll move along. Wherever we are. I think, Ms. Dakota, we moved to ad hoc committees. Oh. Okay, Miss Shannon, why don't you come on now and we'll catch up. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. So Lainey, your comments are correct in our budgeting process. And since we're meeting regularly, I can tell you where I am in that process, every week. If that's what you would like to know, I'll be happy to do that. A couple things I'd like to mention is the resident handbook is being updated, thankfully, by Evelyn Melton and Marie Cowart. And I think the new version is going to be absolutely beautiful, easier to read, easier to navigate. And so I just wanted to express appreciation to both of them for working on that for us. And those will be going out in our new packets, and we'll also send a copy to our current residents so that you have the latest version. You'll notice some of the furniture will be vacating from the Wall of Honor. We expect tomorrow to have our first shipment of new furniture for that space. I hope that you like the new and improved furniture pieces at the Wall of Honor. I think it'll be lovely. Rooftop Garden has its second coat of paint, and clearly it's not drying. You can hear from the weather. But as soon as it's completely dry, we're going to put the furniture back up there. However, while we had everything out, we went ahead and replaced the lights and started painting the poles so it will look nice and fresh and pretty when we get all of our new furniture up there. Keister has been working on the irrigation. They reported today that it has been repaired throughout the campus. So that's a nice change of pace for us. We also celebrated National Nurses Week and National Nursing Home Week. So if you happen to see the staff dressed strangely, they had a couple of retro days, sports days, things like that. We had a food truck out, we had gifts, we had themed dress-ups. Of course, what really threw me was when one of the residents called me over and said, "What did you come as today?" I said, "I'm just me." You're going to see some trees being removed. We did an audit, thanks to Sam Hand, of some of our compromised, disease, or dead trees. And so we are going to have Miller's Tree come out in the next few weeks and start removing those prior to hurricane season. So we did that in advance of the season. We don't want them to fall over in a severe storm. So the Miller's Tree trucks will be coming and going and taking some of those trees. Sparklers, thank you for the planters and the plants that you brought to Memory Care. So Martha and company are very excited to get out there with our residents in Memory Care and start planting and enjoying all of those. So you may have already heard Victoria Hewler is going to be here next Friday at 10 a.m. in the McGuire Center. She is going to be discussing estate planning. I think it's an awesome opportunity for you to come and hear from Victoria on an area that she's extremely knowledgeable of. And poor Victoria also just hired my son. So really now is the time to talk to her before he gets in the mix. So on next Monday, the 22nd and 23rd, we're going to have visits from folks from our home office, Jim Pulaski, Scott Cairns, Rod Jordan, Dave Martino, who's our new marketing vice president. They're going to be doing what we call a walkabout. A walkabout is when they come and look at the entire campus, look at empty units, walk the halls, drive around, and give us some advice on things that we should be improving on, and look at any potential capital purchases. So just wanted to make sure that you're aware of that too. So as you have ideas, that you'll get them to me so we can get quotes for that. So that is next week. Also on Tuesday morning, Scott and Dave will be meeting with our marketing subcommittee. So that'll be fun. Third floor. So I think I've told you already that third floor is fully furnished. We want to have an open house and we want to invite you. We would like for you to come and see the third floor of the Perry Center if you have not come to visit it yet, and see how lovely it looks, and actually have some of our residents open their apartments to you, let you walk around and see the furnishings. They're really, really lovely. So that's going to be June the 7th from 2 to 4. We'll make sure to get that published in the WOW as well. Alrighty? Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Resident on third floor raised the question of when the cubbies and the mailboxes will be
ordered.
available.
So we're in final selection. We cannot find ones that look exactly like second and fourth. That was our goal, so that they would all be standard. And so we have what we think will be a really, really nice option for the third floor residents. Yes, ma'am.
On Friday night, I went into the dining room to pick up a meal,
Mhm.
and I was charged 75 cents for a to-go box.
Mm.
Is that going to be announced to the residents?
So, okay, go ahead.
That was brought to the attention of the dining committee, and that was a mistake on the part of whoever it was. It's 75 cents for takeout is only for employees. And that came from, that was a dictate from Westminster Communities. It's not for residents. However, we also need to remind you that there's carry out only in the evening, not in the lunch for residents. Also along that same line, I was going to bring this up later, the number of employees eating in the residence has dropped by about 50% because residents are interrupting their lunch if they choose to stay in the bistro to ask them questions. So now they cost them 75 cents to take it back to their office. So please, if you see them in the bistro, don't stop and ask them a question then. They only have a half hour for lunch. If they have to spend 25 minutes of that responding to you, they don't get to eat their lunch. And the dollars that are spent in the bistro help us too. So we're kind of cutting off our nose to spite our face when the number of employees drops off in the bistro.
Okay, I was told by Penny that Radiance instructed her to take the 75 cents out from the residents picking up meals in the evening, and that's what she did. And I asked for a refund, and she gave it to me, and I just ate in the dining room. But
Okay.
there were a lot of people that were affected by this.
Right, we had asked the question of who all was supposed to be charged, and I think somebody in dining kind of ran with that. So nobody was supposed to be charged for those meals.
So will all those people get refunds?
You have to tell me what night that is so we can look through the POS.
Friday night evening meal.
Okay, POS for Friday and Saturday. All right. Got it. Thank you for bringing that up.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry that happened. Anybody else? Hello.
Hi. Whoa, not too close. Hi, my name is Barbara, and I've just moved into Canopy Oaks, not even a whole week, tripping over boxes still and all of that. So bear with me if my question's not right on point. The resident handbook, which you said is being revised, has been near and dear to me because it was my only lifeline to try to figure out what to do, where to go, and how to do it. Are the two people that you announced that are revising the handbook residents, or are they with administration?
They're both residents.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Because I found a lot of things of, oh, no, that's not what we really do. This is what we really do.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
think you'll find this handbook is a little more spot on.
fantastic. Thank you.
Yes, I'm so glad to hear that. Anybody else? All right, thank you so much. Mhm.
Well, I'm going to discuss very briefly the ad hoc and the committees, but before I get into that, we have some new committee chairs that if they're here, I'd like to introduce them. First off, for the dining committee, we have Joe Bowman, Miss Joe Bowman. Oh, excuse me, okay. And Miss Sandra Wiley. Okay, both welcome. Please, thank you. My problem. No, the dining is Miss Dee Jones. Thank you. And the Communications Committee, and I don't know if he's here, is there he is, Mike Rashad. So I thank you guys for, ladies and gentlemen, for taking on those duties. Our other chairs have decided to continue, and that brings me to the next order of business. At the end of last term, after the reports were given by the two ad hoc committees on Dempsey Mayo traffic and marketing, we were initially of the opinion that those committees would sunset. However, as we got a little further on down, we realized that not all those recommendations had been followed up at that point. And in fact, in the case of Dempsey Mayo, they may go into the next one or two councils, depending on when the traffic circle actually gets in, because some of those recommendations may be tied to the traffic circle itself. So we've asked both those committees to stay on in a more or less a monitoring role. We do not expect another report out of them, but we would expect to get updates from them in the future as they deal with their recommendations and going forward. Also, the committees, the policy advisory committees, some of those chairs are staying the same. Some of them are changing. And in light of that, I've given them latitude to look at their structure and see whether they want to increase, decrease, have subcommittees going forward in order to deal with the issues that they have to do. At least one committee is asked to narrow the focus a little bit so that they can deal with a specific issue because they felt the charter was a little too wide to kind of get their arms around. So those you'll be getting updates on those as we go forward, but the committees are getting off the ground, getting their goals for the year, and moving forward into this year. Questions from the board? Questions from the residents on either one of those topics? Again, to Joe and Sandra, I apologize. Credit card payments. While the Residents Council cannot give you financial advice, let me pass this on. Apparently, a number of children who pay the bills for their parents or whoever they're taking care of in a guardian capacity have requested of Westminster Communities that they be able to do that by credit card because apparently they want their frequent flyer miles or whatever. Having said that, this is new, and if you've been paying it by check or by bank draw, that has been free. If you choose to do it by credit card, and if you think about it, for every $1,000 of your monthly fee, that 3% is $30, I believe, if my math is right, which is $360 per year for the convenience of using your credit card per $1,000 of fee. So for most people, I don't think it makes much sense. However, if you have questions, please go to the business office and query them about using your credit card to pay your monthly fee. Enough said on that subject. We've heard from Ms. Shannon. As we move on with the agenda, are there any comments that any of the board members would like to make? Such a quiet bunch. Comments from the...
I have a
whoa,
comment.
whoa.
I wasn't going to make it, but since nobody else talking. On this new billing thing, I'm not clear why they had to change it to the 20th and the 21st the bills come out on the 1st, but for incidental expenses, the cycle is the 20th, or the 21st to the 20th of the next month. But for our monthly bill, it's still the 1st. And like, for example, for the meal plans, is that going to be from the 1st? Or is that going to be from the 21st to the 20th? It's all quite, and I won't even go into how that affects Canopy Oaks problem. But I don't really understand why they had to change the date for half of our expense, or for some of our expenses, so we have 2 different billing periods.
I would say, go to the business office, but my
I
short.
know. I just wondered if there was a general feeling, or everybody just loves it.
I think the genesis of that was for people who pay by check, who want to know what the major portion of it is for the month, so that they can make arrangements if they have to sell from their portfolio to pay their payment. And then the incidentals they take out of their checking account. That's the only thing I can think of as to why that was put in place. But Westminster Communities did not communicate to us why they went to that, or who was pushing it. But we'll try to ask. Question in the back, yes, sir.
Walter Moore is the president of the forum, or whatever, the chair of the forum. He wasn't able to be here today. He asked me to make an announcement that a week from tomorrow, the forum will have in this room at 2 o'clock a program called A Day in the Life of the Memory Care Center. And it's meant to be the second, or it is the second of 2 that the forum programs have done this year. It's going to look at the dining, activities, and nursing teams and how they make Westminster Memory Care Center good for its residents. So if you might want to think about that, a week from tomorrow. And then a month from now, Walter would add this, we're having the last forum presentation for the year, and the topic will be announced soon, or will. But it's also the final of our 10th year of continuous forum presentations at Westminster Oaks, and we're planning, I think, a minor celebration as part of that. So just to let you know.
Oh, thank you, Mike. I think Miss Kathy wanted to make a comment. Okay. Jay, right there.
Hi, my name is Kathy Caproth, and I am a past president of the Residents Council. I am still very caring for each individual here, but I have something that's important for me to say. And I realize that all of you have many more life experiences and many more ways of taking care of your life, but I'm going to tell you my short story, hopefully only 2 minutes long. One morning I got up, it was 15 minutes after 7, and there was a knock on my door. Not thinking, obviously, and I opened up the door, and there was a man there. And I just opened it up a crack, because I knew something didn't feel right. But I thought, the residents come by, and they knock when they want to, ask questions, and so that's the reason I opened up for a crack. And he said he needed to come into my kitchen to fix my electrical, electrical in my kitchen. And I thought to myself I had an electrical problem in my socket, a hot wire, not so much. But anyway, I said, do you have a work order? And he said, no. I said, well, I'll tell you. You go get a work order, and then you come back. And he said, I won't be back. So I didn't think much about it, but then I decided I better tell security. And then another time I went down to the coffee shop. I'm kind of shaking here. Where you serve coffee, and there was a young man, tall, thin, fixing his coffee, and he had one of these hoodies on. He would not turn, he would not face me, even after I said good morning. And then I had this stroke of fear that just went through me. And so after that, I talked to the the security man, Robert, again. And he said that there was another incident across the street. And he said, and the security is really handling this well. Evidently, they were able somehow to track the individual. And this first individual is being tracked. And that if he comes on our property with 1 foot, they will call the sheriff and he will be arrested. So, after that, and I will want to, in all honesty, I need to share with you about the coffee person. He turned out to be a son of a manager. I believe it was one of the contract people that come on campus, and evidently he is very, very shy. So, you may want to believe that, you may not. But anyway, I just wanted you to know in an abundance of transparency, please do not answer your door if you don't know who's there. And if you get frightened or you don't know what to do, call security. That's your best bet, and they will come right away to help you if you don't know what to do, if you don't know to open the door or not. So I think my 3 minutes are up.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Kathy. It would behoove all of us to keep our doors locked, when you're at home, and especially in the apartment buildings, because you don't know who is there and what they're doing. You always have your Siri button that's quicker than trying to call security, and they'll react to it. But remember from the time that we were having all the bomb scares, if you see something, say something. Please call security when you see a person that doesn't look familiar, looks out of place. Remember, all our maintenance people, all the employees here wear their little badge, and it's displayed prominently. If you don't see the badge, then you don't know who they are. So please keep that in mind. Yes, Miss Mary Jane.
Some of you probably already know that our chaplain, Taylor Phillips, has written a new book called Queen of the Clouds. Shannon has given me permission to let you know, I'm not soliciting, but to let you know that I will be ordering books, and I have gotten a 20% discount from the publisher, but the discount will go to the foundation. So the book is $20. Every $4 of that will go to the foundation. If you would like to acquire a book, see me afterwards.
Other comments?
Somebody asked me what it was about. Taylor found a lady somehow or other. I've only read a few pages of it, but it's about 2 women pilots. They wanted to complete the trip around the world that Amelia Earhart made. One of the ladies lived in Quincy, and Taylor got to know her, and it's quite an interesting story because they both tried to do this at about the same time. And I know, Joyce, you're a pilot. Your mother was a pilot, and we have, I think, some other pilots here. So anybody interested in that might be interested in this.
Any other questions from the audience or residents? I have 2 final items. Ms. Shannon mentioned these, I think, at the last meeting. Scams. There were 2 of them going around. One of them is the Apple security. And it's probably, I'm an Apple person, so it may be the same for Androids. If you get a call about an update or a security issue, but don't respond to it, or to a text, or to an email. The best thing to do is if you see it, then just get off, go back through your account, your personal account, to that entity, in my case, apple.com, go to my account, go into it, and see what they have to say. Please do not respond to those things that come pop-ups like that. You know, you can read it and it says, you know, there is an update, say, okay, but don't go through their you know, you just tap it to hook into it. Don't do that. Go to your account. That way you know whether it's real or not. The second one was...
Lanny, can I just say one
Yes.
thing? One way that you can check is look at the sender, and they almost always have a Gmail account. Businesses do not have Gmail accounts. So it's a real quick way to know it's a scam.
Yeah, you can always click on at the top, whoever the sender is, and if it doesn't look like it's legitimate, as Beverly said, that's always the first check, and then I go from there. So I don't open things from people I don't know. That's the best one. The second one was, I think you all know that the COVID emergency has sunset, and as a result, free COVID test kits are no longer being sent out. However, there are people who are trying to charge your Medicare account for that, which may mean that they have your Medicare card information. If you receive an unsolicited Medicare kit, do not open it. Notify Medicare that you've gotten this unsolicited so that they can follow up on it and probably take it back to the post office is what you need to do. So if you haven't opened it, you won't be charged for it. But be careful of those kinds of things because those kits are no longer being sent out by the government free of charge. Any other questions, comments? Oh, yes, thank you. In June, the 19th of June, which would be the third Monday and ordinarily be our resident council meeting, is Juneteenth, which is a federal holiday. So the meeting of the next resident council will be on the 26th of June, the fourth Monday, 28th of June. Okay. I guess I'm gonna have to take Everett's advice and make sure I look at them. So just keep in mind that it'll be 1 week later. Any other comments from the board? From the residents? Well, then we beat the clock and the weather is outside. Thank you.